The housekeeper locked the Duke's new governess outside in the snow, unaware she was his long-lost sister. The night Clara arrived at Ashwick Hall, the snow was already past her ankles. She had been on the road for 11 hours. The carriage that brought her from London had rattled through 2 counties of grey sky and frozen fields before dropping her at the iron gate of the estate, and then the driver had turned around and left before she could even ask him to wait. She stood there with her bag in one hand and a letter in the other, looking up at a house so large and so dark that for a moment she wondered if she had the right address, but she had the letter, and the letter said, Ashwick Hall, Yorkshire, and there was no other house for miles. Clara was not the sort of woman who frightened easily. She had grown up in a small house in the south of England with adoptive parents who were kind but not wealthy, and she had learned early on that the world did not slow down for anyone who stood still in it. So she picked up her bag, walked through the gate, and made her way around to the back of the house, as the agency had instructed her, because governesses used the servants' entrance, not the front door. A young footman opened the door when she knocked. He looked surprised to see her, which she found slightly odd. He told her to wait and disappeared inside. She waited. Snow fell on her shoulders. She pulled her coat tighter. Then the door opened again, and Mrs. Agnes Peel walked out. The housekeeper of Ashwick Hall was a tall woman of about 60, with silver hair pulled back so severely it looked like it hurt, and eyes that had spent 3 decades deciding whether people could be trusted. She looked at Clara the way a judge looks at evidence, without warmth, without hurry. Clara handed over her letter of appointment. Mrs. Peel read it. Then she looked up. The agency, she said, was told this position was filled weeks ago. Clara blinked. I'm sorry? Whitmore's agency. They were informed. The Duke has made no mention of engaging a new governess. She folded the letter and held it out. I don't know who sent you, miss, but whoever it was has made an error. Or you have. Clara reached into her bag and pulled out a second letter. This one not from the agency, but from a man named Mr. Aldous, who was described on his letterhead as the Duke's personal solicitor. The letter instructed her to present herself at Ashwick Hall on the 5th of January. It bore a seal. It was signed clearly. Clara had read it a dozen times on the journey, and it had seemed perfectly straightforward. Mrs. Peel took that letter too. She studied it for a long time without speaking. Something moved behind her eyes. Not suspicion exactly, but something deeper than that, something older. Then she folded it. Wait here, she said. She went inside. The door closed behind her. Clara waited. 1 minute. 5, 10. The snow was not light anymore. It was coming down in thick, heavy curtains, the kind that muffles sound and makes the world feel very small. She stamped her feet to keep the feeling in them. She tried the door. It was locked from the inside. She knocked again. No answer. She walked around to the front of the house. Those doors were bolted. She tried a ground floor window. Frozen shut. She tried another. Also frozen. The wind had picked up and it was cutting through her coat like it wasn't there at all, and she was starting to understand, with the calm, practical clarity that sometimes comes to people in real danger, that she needed to get out of this cold immediately, or the cold was going to win. She found a wood store attached to the side of the house. It was not warm, but it was out of the wind, and there was a low wall she could sit on. She pressed herself against it, pulled her bag onto her lap, tucked her hands under her arms and waited. She had no idea what else to do. Inside the house, things were moving faster than she knew. Mrs. Peel had gone directly to the Duke's study on the first floor. The Duke of Ashwick, whose name was Edmund Voss, who was 34 years old, who had the kind of face that had been handsome once, and was now just tired, was sitting at his desk reading reports when she came in. She laid the solicitor's letter in front of him without a word. He read it. Then he read it again. He set it down. Where is she? He asked. I sent her away, Your Grace. The appointment seemed irregular. The agency had no record of Mrs. Peel. His voice was quiet, but it stopped her. That letter is from Aldous. You sent away a woman in this weather, because her appointment seemed irregular to you, a silence that was not comfortable for anyone in it. Find her, he said. He was already standing up. Now. He took a lamp from the desk and went himself. He didn't wait for a servant to do it. He went out through the back of the house into the snow, lamp held up, calling her name into the dark. He found her in the wood store, sitting on a low wall with her bag on her lap and her hands tucked under her arms. Her face was white. Her lips had gone slightly blue. But when the door opened and the lamplight fell on her, she looked up at him with an expression so steady and composed that for a moment, he almost felt like he was the one who needed to explain himself. "Miss Clara?" he said. "Your Grace," she said, as if they were meeting in a sitting room. He brought her inside. He called for blankets and hot tea, and a fire in the blue room, and he did all of it quickly, with the sharp efficiency of a man who understood that something bad had almost happened, and that it was, in a way that he hadn't worked out yet but already felt, his responsibility. Mrs. Peel stood in the hallway and watched. Her face had gone the color of old ash. She was not looking at the new governess with suspicion anymore. She was looking at her with something that had no clean name. Part recognition, part dread, part the particular horror of a person who has just understood that a secret they buried 28 years ago has walked in through the back door. Because she had seen the mark. When Clara sat down near the fire and pulled off her gloves, the lamplight caught the inside of her left wrist, and there it was, a small birthmark, curved like the first sliver of a new moon. Mrs. Peel had seen that mark before. She had seen it on the wrist of the late Duchess, Lady Isabel, lying in her bed after a long and terrible labor. And she had seen it on the wrist of the infant girl the midwife had carried out of that room, wrapped in a kitchen cloth, in the middle of the night. The infant, who was supposed to have died of a fever within the week. The infant whose death the old Duke had reported to his household with a sorrow that, in hindsight, had always seemed a little too controlled. Mrs. Peel left the room. She did not sleep that night. The next morning, before anyone in the house had finished breakfast, a carriage pulled up the drive, and Mr. Frederick Aldous, the Duke's solicitor, a small and very old man who moved with the deliberate care of someone carrying something fragile, knocked at the front door and asked to speak with the Duke and the new governess together. He had, he said, been waiting for this day for 23 years. They sat in the Duke's study. Clara still had color in her face from the cold the night before, and her hands were wrapped around a cup of tea she had not put down since someone gave it to her. The Duke sat on the other side of his desk and looked at the solicitor the way you look at someone who is about to say something you are not sure you want to hear. Mr. Aldous placed a sealed letter on the desk between them. "Your father wrote this," he said to the Duke. "In the autumn of 1859, he gave it to me with one instruction. He said, if a woman ever comes to this house bearing your mother's birthmark, a crescent on the left wrist, give her this letter. Don't go looking for her. Just wait." He paused. "She came last night." Clara looked at her own wrist. Then she looked at the solicitor. Then she looked at the Duke. The Duke opened the letter. It took him a long time to read it. No one spoke. The fire in the grate made the only sound in the room. When he finished, he set it down and looked at Clara. He did not say anything at first. He just looked at her. Really looked, the way people rarely bother to look at each other, and something in his face shifted, very slowly, like ice beginning to soften. He slid the letter across the desk. Clara read it. Her hands, wrapped around her teacup, went still. The letter explained everything. It explained that the late Duke's wife had delivered 2 children, not one. The son, Edmund, had been presented to the household. The daughter, born in the same night, had not. The old Duke was under enormous political pressure at the time, enemies circling, his name being dragged through Parliament. A second child, a daughter who might later be used in political arrangements by the wrong people, felt to him like a danger he could not afford. So he had made a terrible choice. The baby girl had been given to a family in the South, a quiet, honest couple named Marin, who had no children of their own. The old Duke had told his household she had not survived. He had told his son the same. He had never stopped thinking about it. The letter made that clear. He had left the locket with the midwife, a small tin oval with a painted portrait of the Duchess inside, to be passed to the girl when she was old enough. He had left the letter with his solicitor. He had told the solicitor to watch for the mark. He had done everything a man could do, short of undoing the thing he had done. Clara reached into her bag with slow, careful hands. She took out the locket she had carried since childhood, the one her adoptive mother had pressed into her hands on her deathbed, and told her to keep safe, told her she would understand it one day. She opened it. Inside was a small painted portrait, a woman with dark eyes and a composed expression, and, though it was hard to tell in a painting so small, something about the shape of her face that Clara had always thought looked familiar, in a way she couldn't explain. She looked up at the portrait on the wall above the Duke's fireplace. It was the same woman. The Duke had risen from his chair at some point without anyone noticing. He was standing at the window with his back to them. Outside, the snow was still coming down, quieter now. The kind of snow that falls after a storm has said most of what it needed to say. "I was told you died before you were a day old," he said. His voice was level, but something underneath it was not. "My father sat me down himself," he cried. I remember being angry that he cried because I didn't know how to yet. He wasn't lying about the grief, Clara said. Just about the reason for it. He turned around. He looked at her for a long moment. "He also wrote this letter," she said. "He also kept the locket in circulation. He also told the solicitor to watch. He was waiting for me to come back, in the only way he knew how to wait." Neither of them spoke for a while after that. Later that afternoon, Mrs. Agnes Peel asked to speak with both of them. She came in and stood very straight and told them exactly what she knew and when she had known it. That she had been in the room the night of the birth. That she had carried the infant to the midwife. That she had been told the child died within the week and had believed it. That when she saw the mark on Clara's wrist last night, she had understood everything in the space of 1 second, and had spent the night alone with that understanding. She looked at Clara when she said the next part. "I locked that door because I thought you were a fraud. I thought someone had found out about the birthmark and was using it to make a false claim on this estate. I was trying to protect him." She glanced at the Duke. "I nearly killed his sister doing it." The room was very quiet. "You are forgiven," said the Duke. It was not a long speech. It was barely a sentence. But he meant it. And she knew he meant it. And that was enough. Mrs. Peel nodded once, precisely, and left. That evening, the Duke's niece, a small, serious girl of 7 named Rosalind, who had not said a single word to anyone since her parents died the previous spring, appeared in the doorway of the study. Nobody had asked her to come. She had simply come. She walked across the room and stood in front of Clara and took her hand in both of hers and turned it over carefully, the way children examine things they find interesting. She looked at the crescent mark on her wrist for a long time. Then she said, in a small, clear voice that nobody in that house had heard for 8 months, "You have the moon on your wrist." The Duke looked up from his chair. "I do," Clara said. "Does it mean you're going to stay?" Clara looked across the room at her brother. He was watching her with an expression that was difficult to read, and also not difficult at all. The look of someone who has been carrying something alone for a very long time, and has just realized, in a quiet and unexpected moment, that they might not have to anymore. "Yes," Clara said. "I think it does." The legal process of confirming who she was took several months. Records were produced, witnesses found, documents verified. Clara did not take the Voss name entirely. She became Clara Voss Marin, keeping both, because both were true, and both had made her who she was. She stayed on as Rosalind's governess for another year, not because she had to, but because the child was learning to speak again, slowly and carefully, one word at a time, and Clara did not want to be the reason she stopped. Mrs. Peel retired quietly at Easter. She came back every Christmas after that for as long as she lived, and she always knocked at the front door, never the back, and she was always let in immediately. Edmund Voss never became a sentimental man, but he had a second portrait painted of his mother, one for the study and one for Clara's sitting room, and on the day it was delivered, he invited her to walk in the gardens, and they walked for nearly 2 hours, and by the time they came back inside, they were talking the way people talk when they have known each other their whole lives, and are only now, finally, getting the chance to say so. End.